This video was sponsored by CuriosityStream and Nebula. You can't go more than a couple years without hearing about some whitewashing controversy in Hollywood. Whitewashing in this context meaning a white actor playing a character in a movie or TV show who was not white in the original media, or in real life if they happen to be a real person. But I gotta say, I'm not super losing sleep over who plays Goku in the live-action Dragon Ball movie. Whew. What a bad movie. But I do think it's an interesting discussion, at least worth a video, because I don't think these complaints are without merit. Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
I want to give a quick shout out to the homies that support the channel, people like JC, Juyus, Steve Streza, and Sun Mountain. If you think my content brings value to you, please consider becoming a homie yourself by becoming a patron or YouTube member. Media, even fictional media, is very powerful and has a strong influence on how we think about the world and each other. Tom Scott did a great video a while ago where he makes a compelling argument suggesting that a single episode of The Simpsons permanently changed how people across the world sang a popular children's song. Speaking of The Simpsons, I've spoken on this channel before about the character Apu and Hari Kondabolu's documentary about Apu, in which several South Asian entertainers talk about how the portrayal of the character has affected how they have been treated throughout their lives and careers. So yeah, media is influential. I've also talked before about the importance of media representation, and this is probably easy to understand for most people who are part of an underrepresented group. When I see Black people on the screen portrayed in a complex and authentic way, it makes me feel good. I can identify with it. Like, I love the show Friends. I think it's funny and sweet. Apparently, it's cool now for everyone on social media to say that Friends sucks, but you know, to each his own. But one of the reasons why that show was so popular is because people identified with the characters. Sure, they're kind of exaggerated, but it reminded people of their own experiences and adventures hanging out with their friends. But I don't personally identify with any of those characters. It's funny from a writing and performance standpoint, but nothing on that show resembles me or anything I grew up doing. But take a show like Living Single, which is also about a group of 6 friends living in New York who just happen to be Black. And it actually came out 1 year before Friends, just saying. Think what you will about that fact. But the point is, I related to that show a lot more. And even though Living Single mostly revolved around the women of the group, those Black women resembled people I knew and in some cases loved in real life. And I imagine it's the same for people of other races, for queer people, for disabled people, etc. It feels good to be represented. But beyond it just feeling good, it helps normalize the message that minorities are just as important as members of the dominant groups, that the world is diverse and that diversity should be celebrated, that people who look like you or people you love can be more than just stereotypical caricatures or one-dimensional secondary characters. They can be the heroes or even complex antagonists. This message is especially crucial for children and teenagers who are still developing their identities and are particularly impressionable. So I totally understand why some people get upset when a character who was originally not white is played by a white actor. It feels like a slap in the face given that people of color are already underrepresented in media. But despite all the fuss, filmmakers continue to whitewash TV and movies. Some recent examples that have caused a bit of an uproar are the casting of Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a character that was definitely originally Asian in the comics, and almost every character in the film Gods of Egypt, although to be fair, they are portraying gods, not humans, many of whom are usually depicted as animals. But if Egyptian gods were walking around among us, do you really think that they would look like a bunch of white dudes? All that said, this topic is a lot more nuanced and complicated than social media would have you believe. Everything is fucking complicated. Sometimes Western TV shows and films that are adapted from foreign media get accused of whitewashing, like the Netflix adaptation of Death Note, for example. The original series takes place in Japan, but for this particular live-action adaptation, it was moved to Seattle, and many of the primary characters were played by white actors. This could be seen as another missed opportunity to cast people of color in a Hollywood film. Even if you wanted to set the movie in America, there are plenty of talented English-speaking Asian actors that could help bring authenticity to an originally Asian role. But it's clear that this adaptation was not intended to be a film specifically about Asian people, like, say, Crazy Rich Asians or Better Luck Tomorrow, which is a great movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's supposed to be about American people in general, and I suppose they wanted the demographics of the film to represent that. Now, I'm not super familiar with Death Note, but it has been argued that the original is supposed to be specifically about Japanese people and culture. So an American remake kind of loses a lot of the context that inspires the story to begin with. But that's the whole idea behind a remake, isn't it? You use an existing narrative as inspiration for telling what amounts to a new story. Now, that new story might be very similar to the old one, but it's still a different vision and shouldn't necessarily be beholden to the themes of the original. This argument seems to imply that Western adaptations of foreign media that stars people of color must never be done. So no The Ring, no The Departed, no The Lake House. I didn't even know that last one was a remake until I started working on this video. Movie's kind of cheesy, but I like it. But is that really what we're arguing? It doesn't seem like that's what we're arguing, but I'm having trouble finding the line between what is and isn't acceptable to some people. Maybe the biggest recent kerfuffle related to this was Scarlett Johansson playing Major in 2017's Ghost in the Shell, which draws inspiration from several different sources in the Ghost in the Shell franchise, including the 1995 anime film and the TV series Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, which, by the way, has an absolute banger of an opening theme. So yes, it's a remake, but it's a different creative vision. Like Death Note, the original Ghost in the Shell stories take place primarily in Japan, albeit a futuristic one, and the setting is largely inspired by a Hong Kong aesthetic. The 2017 version is a bit vaguer about the setting. The city in this movie features a more generic sci-fi look and a more racially diverse population. Now, as usual, I dropped the ball and didn't make a video about this movie when it was timely, and I'm not about to do it now when no one cares anymore. There are many arguments that you could make about whether this was bad or fine or whatever you might think about it. Again, I could have made a whole video about it. It's worth mentioning that people actually living in Japan had fewer problems with the casting of Scarlett Johansson. And even Mamoru Oshii, the director of the original anime film, gave Scarlett Johansson his blessing and praised her performance. But we should acknowledge the difference between Asian people living in Asia who are used to seeing themselves represented authentically and complexly in their own media, and Asian people who live in Western countries who are not so much. It's probably less of a big deal to occasionally see a white lady playing an Asian character if you still get to see people who look like you in every other movie. But that's not really the experience of most Asian people who live in Western countries. So again, I understand the complaints. So this inevitably leads to a follow-up question. What about when people of color play originally white characters? We're starting to see this a lot more these days with the increase of so-called colorblind casting, which is a term I'm almost positive was invented by white people. You also hear terms like non-traditional casting, which I guess people decided was a little more thoughtful. Outside of a specific racial context or theme in a movie, I would expect most casting to be colorblind. You would just pick the person that gave the best audition or whatever. I'm sure that's not what always happens, but that's what you would expect. So the only reason we'd even pay attention to the race of the actor is if they were chosen specifically because of their race, or if they were playing a character that you wouldn't expect to be their race. Like in the upcoming film The Batman, the characters Commissioner Gordon and Catwoman, who are usually depicted as white in the comics and most media for that matter, will be played by people of color. We've actually been seeing this a lot with comic book inspired movies in recent years. Jamie Foxx as Electro, Jurnee Smollett as Black Canary, and half the characters in Deadpool 2. Of course, there are examples in other genres as well, such as Kirby Howell-Baptiste playing Anita Darling in Cruella, or the more racially diverse cast of the 2014 adaptation of Annie. So the question is, if we care so much about preserving the original themes and essence of the source material, why shouldn't that work the other way around? If whitewashing is bad, then what about blackwashing or brownwashing? Actually, I don't think anyone actually says brownwashing, probably because it sounds kind of gross. I've heard many arguments in response to this, and honestly, not all of them are that compelling. For example, some people say that it's okay for a person of color to play an originally white character because it's rare that a character's whiteness is essential to the character. While on the other hand, it's quite common for a black or brown character's race or ethnicity to be a central part of that character's story. While I think that's true, I have a hunch that most people who make this argument would still have a problem if a white actor played an originally black character, even if that character's blackness was not essential to the story. In the George Romero horror classic Night of the Living Dead, the main protagonist, Ben, is a black dude. And while Romero would explore racial themes in the sequels, in this movie, there's really no attention drawn to the fact that he's black. I mean, there's this asshole white guy who butts heads with Ben throughout the movie, and you just know he's about to drop the N-word at some point, but he never does. Ben's blackness is of no real relevance to the story, or at least it wasn't intended to be. In fact, Romero has said that the reason the actor Duane Jones was chosen was simply because he gave the best audition. Kind of like what I was saying before. But even though his being black was not central to the story, a black actor, Tony Todd, the legend, was still cast to play Ben when they remade Night of the Living Dead in 1990. Can you imagine if they cast a white actor in that role? It just wouldn't be right? Now, in hindsight, the decision to cast a black actor in the lead role became historically significant, especially since that movie came out in 1968 when that kind of thing was rare. And it's hard to believe that Romero didn't understand the gravity of what he was doing at the time. Plus, it's not hard to think about race and racism when you're watching a movie about a black man trying to survive while surrounded by a bunch of hysterical white people. But even if none of that was true, we'd probably still be a little uncomfortable if they replace a black actor with a white one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's impossible for a character's blackness to not be relevant, given the state of our society. This argument is also a little bit disingenuous when you think about it from the other direction. It might be rare, but certainly there are characters whose whiteness arguably is central to the story. Like recently, we've been seeing many white historical figures being played by people of color, like Jodie Turner-Smith as Anne Boleyn and like everybody in Hamilton. And I feel like it's hard to argue that a character's race or ethnicity is not central to who they are when they were literally a real person who existed. I guess the point is that the themes of these historical stories kind of transcend the people that they're about. But I mean, you could say that about the stories of people of color as well. I don't know, I just think it's a weird argument. For me, what it boils down to is the argument I've already made about representation. Just like Asian people in Asian countries, white people in the West have no shortage of authentic and complex representation. Casting people of color in traditionally white roles does nothing to take away from white representation. It's already all over the place. But on the flip side, casting a white actor to play a character that was originally black or brown steals away not only an opportunity for a person of color to get some work, but also for more diverse representation. And this matters because people of color are still struggling to see themselves represented complexly and authentically on the big and small screens. Now, we've made progress, don't get me wrong. It's better than it was back when Duane Jones was cast in Night of the Living Dead, but we still got a long way to go. That's just me though. What do you think? If you'd like to watch my videos without ad breaks or sponsor segments, you should consider checking out Nebula. Nebula, if you didn't already know, is a streaming video platform featuring many great educational and editorial content creators, most of which you probably already know from YouTube. Since it's Black History Month, it's a great time to check out some of the Black creators on Nebula, like me, but also folks like Foreign Man in a Foreign Land, Marques Brownlee, Melina Pendulum, and more. The cool thing about Nebula is that it's actually owned by its creators. We built Nebula so that we could have a platform to share and profit off of our work without having to worry about things like demonetization or mysterious algorithms that decide your fate. In addition to being able to watch our YouTube videos ad-free on Nebula, some creators provide exclusive bonus content for Nebula subscribers, like outtakes and extended discussions, and even completely original projects that you can't find anywhere else. To help us accomplish our goals, we at Nebula have partnered with CuriosityStream, who is the sponsor of this video. CuriosityStream is, of course, an excellent streaming service with thousands of documentaries and nonfiction titles like Beyond the Spotlight, a series that reveals the untold stories of famous stars like Shaquille O'Neal and Kristen Bell. The topics on CuriosityStream are widespread, ranging from pop culture, science, history, and so much more. It's a perfect fit for the intelligent content you'll find on Nebula. So we worked out a deal where if you go to curiositystream.com/T1J and sign up using the code T1J, you'll also get access to Nebula absolutely free. And CuriosityStream is offering a special deal to my subscribers where you can get 26% off an annual plan, bringing the total to less than $15 for a full year of both CuriosityStream and Nebula. It is an amazing deal. So once again, just go to curiositystream.com/T1J and enter the code T1J to get full access to both CuriosityStream and Nebula. And remember, by supporting great sponsors like CuriosityStream, you not only get access to a great service, but you also support me and a whole community of awesome creators.